Seventh grade, we are beginning chapter 8 today. So at the very top of your concept book in white, put a box, chapter 8, measurements and planar figures. We're going to begin with measurements. Measurements today by comparing and converting measurements, beginning on page 437 in your textbook. Super important lesson. So this is a stumbling block for many people in math. It reminds me of chapter 3 when we did percents. You know, people just sometimes struggle with that. So if you ever wanted to, you could come back and watch the video. It'll be posted online. We're converting measurements two ways. One is within a system. Within a system would be like, how many inches are in a foot? How many inches in a foot? 12. So look at the table I gave you. The table I gave you has within system lengths. You see the United States customary? This is a table that's available at the back of the textbook, and I've handed it out today. Okay? Let's see. Okay, so we have this time table, and we can see that 60 seconds equals 1 minute, and so on. You know these things. 7 days equals 1 week. Okay? And then we have metric and United States customary, or otherwise sometimes called standard, the standard system. So how many inches in 1 foot?
12.
How many feet in 1 yard?
3.
3 feet in 1 yard. Okay? And this is an interesting one. And how many feet are in 1 mile?
5,280.
You have this paper in front of you. Look at your paper. Okay, 5,280. So a way to remember that is, one student I had once said that her mom helped her remember that by saying a mile is like going to school in the morning. Their house was about a mile away. And she said, we usually get to school close to 5 to 8 in the morning, 5280. And so after she said that, I never forgot how many feet are in a mile. 5,280, because it's close, it's kind of like 5 to 8 in the morning. Okay? So if that helps you, great. It helps a lot of students that I've shared that with, and if it doesn't help you, you just have to memorize it. It's kind of like knowing how many inches are in a foot. You are expected to know these things, how many inches are in a foot and so on. That's within a system. You understand? How many inches are in a centimeter? That's between systems. So the final table you have is a conversion between tables. This table is something I provide you with for the test. I do not provide you with within a system, but I provide you with a table for between the system. This exact table, okay? So let's back up. You don't need to write these things down. I've provided you with that page so you can tape that in your notes, okay? Let's try converting within a system first. Okay, we're going to use a conversion factor to do this. Conversion factor. If it has the word factor, that gives you a clue as to what operation, right? What operation do we use where we use factors? Riley? Good. She says multiplication. So we're going to multiply today using conversion factors. Okay? Conversion factors are fractions that equal 1, but they have 2 different unit forms, which is why you need the table. We use these to change from one unit form to another unit form. So look at this first conversion factor in the right side of the box. 1 cup, did you know, equals how many ounces? 8 ounces. So this actually equals 1. If I just gave you the fraction 1/8, does that equal 1? 1/8? No, 1/8 doesn't equal 1. It's 1 divided by 8, right? But when you have the different unit forms here, a cup, 1 cup equals 8 ounces, and you put it in a fraction like this, this fraction is equivalent to 1. So we can blow things up, or we can reduce things using a conversion factor, okay? Let's see if you can complete a few other conversion factors. I'm going to show you one piece of the factor, and you tell me what you think the other piece is. So we could say 1 foot equals, what would you think I mean, we could say a number of things, but what do you think it is? Lauren? 12 inches. So there is a conversion factor where we could change from feet to inches, or inches to feet, depending on how we use it. This one would actually be best used for turning inches to feet. You're going to see in a moment. 1 yard is how many feet? Everyone?
3.
3 feet. So there's a conversion factor we could use. 1 mile, can you, without looking at your table, remember what I just told you?
528.
5280, so 5,280 feet. We are often asked that question. It's a strange number to remember, though. 4 quarts equals 1 what? 4 quarts equals 1, no, that's between systems. It's not 1 liter. A quart is a quarter of a gallon. That's why it's called a quart. There's 4 of them in a gallon. Quarter, like 4 quarters in $1. Okay? And you may not know this, but there are 2 pints in 1 quart. Good. When it comes to things like food, we often weigh them in ounces. 16 ounces equals 1 pound. Good. And we abbreviate pound that way, LB. And in the standard system, or the American system, like as was said, the American customary system, 2,000 pounds equals 1 ton. Okay, which is a little different. It is different than the metric ton. Okay? So pause this and make sure you have those. When we look at the table, notice that we just have equivalent things, right? These don't look like fractions, do they? But could you turn them into fractions?
Yes.
Yes, you could if you needed to use it. So if you needed to know how many seconds were in a minute, or if you needed to use 60 seconds equals 1 minute, you could put 60 seconds over 1 minute, or you could put 1 minute over 60 seconds, depending on what you need. They both equal 1, right? So it just depends on what you need. So how do you determine what you need? That's what we're going to work on today. Let me put a little screen over this so you don't see the whole thing. What I want you to do when you start with these things, you're asked to convert them. The question is, how many inches are in 4 feet? So before you just tell me the answer, believe me, the answer is the least of my concerns as far as the number. I really don't want to worry about the number today. Most everybody right now could say 48, so that's not a question here. The question is, how do you set up conversion factors when you're using tougher units that you're not as comfortable with? Most of you are really comfortable with 12 inches in a foot, but most of you are not really comfortable with how many pints in how many gallons or something like that. I mean, it just is not as natural for you, okay? So I want you to really work on what's missing here. What is the conversion factor you would need? And we do this by analyzing the units, the words. So what word are we trying to get in our answer? You can see it, inches. And what word do we have? We're starting with feet. So we're going to multiply this. This is what is so important. Can you create the conversion factor needed? So we're trying to get rid of feet, and we're trying to get to inches. So when we multiply 4 feet by this factor, we want to get rid of feet. Where will the feet be, the word feet, foot, be in this factor if we're going to get rid of it? In the numerator or in the denominator? Who says numerator? Up here? Who says denominator? Okay, we don't have everyone voting. We're trying to get rid of the word feet. We can either multiply by 12 inches over 1 foot or 1 foot over 12 inches, right? We're trying to cancel the word foot. So what goes in the denominator is the word foot, okay? So let's see how this looks. We have 1 foot, and in the top we're trying to get to inches, so we put the word inches. So the first thing we do is we put the words down, and then we go say, how are inches and feet related? How many inches in a foot? You go fill in the numbers after. Okay? And now we're multiplying what looks like just a whole integer to a fraction. So what's the denominator for this? 1. And how do we multiply fractions? How do you do that? How do you multiply fractions? You don't cross products property, that's for proportions. Just straight across the top, straight across the bottom, right? Which is different than addition. Do we add denominators? No. Okay, so when we multiply across the top, what is 4 times 12? 48. And notice inches is here, and then we have feet on top and feet in the denominator. So what can we do with those? We can cancel. They're multiplicative inverses. We have feet over feet, which is great. We don't want feet in our answer. We want inches. Okay? So looking at the words, the units, is called unit analysis. You're analyzing them to make sure you set up your conversion factor correctly. Okay? Let's take a look at number 2. 21,120 feet is how many miles? Okay, so once again, we need to multiply by a conversion factor. What word are we trying to get rid of here? Chris? Feet. So where will that go in our factor? Good, so we start by putting that there. What word are we trying to get to here? So where does that go? On the top, or the numerator. Good. Okay, so now we look at how we set that up and we say, how many feet are in 1 mile? 280. Good. And if you need to, you could put a 1 underneath the first factor. We're multiplying now. What unit is going to cancel? What do we have both in the numerator and in the denominator? Feet. Feet. Good. So we cancel, or we say that equals 1, that multiplicative inverse. And we end up with 21,120 over 5,280, which we do need to reduce, right? How many times does 528 go into 2,112? I divided by 10 first. Did you see that? And then guess what? It goes in evenly. Who knows? If you guess 3, 8 times 3 ends in a 4. 8 times something ends in a 2. 8 times 4. So this goes in exactly 4 miles. So we're not here to learn how to divide a numerator by a denominator. You can go use your scratch paper for that. We're here today to learn how to set up our conversion factors. Okay? So let's try it again. Let's see what you can do here. 12 gallons equals how many pints? Now this one's a little tricky because I don't think your table tells you how many gallons equal how many pints. No, it doesn't. Okay. So what we did talk about on the previous screen was we knew how many quarts are in a gallon, right? So we could start with that. You know, sometimes we need to use 2 conversion factors to get to the final answer. Okay? So if we did, how many quarts are in a gallon? 4. So where would we put quarts and where would we put gallons here? What word are we trying to get rid of?
Gallons.
So we will put gallons on the bottom and quarts on top, right? How many gallons are in a quart? That was a trick question, right? How many quarts are in a gallon? 4. Okay. If we multiply across, what words are canceling out? Gallon. But we're trying to get to pints, so we need a second conversion factor. Can somebody help me set that up? What are we trying to get rid of now? Instead of gallons, we're trying to get rid of? So where will that go? Denominator, right? And in the top, we will have pints. Okay? How many pints in a quart? We said 2 in 1 quart. And so look at that. Quarts are over quarts when we multiply, and so we reduce. Okay? And then when we multiply 12 times 4 times 2, does anyone have that answer? What is it, Lauren?
96.
Good job, 96 points. Okay, I'm going to have to do a second video for the metric system, so you'll have to see that later. We now use the conversion factor of 8 pints to 1 gallon, and it works too. Okay, and we just converted from 22.5 yards to feet.